All advice given is for general information purposes. All legal cases are different, and you should seek the advice of your own attorney before acting or making decisions. No attorney-client privilege applies to communications on this show, and no attorney-client relationship is created by calling or writing in. Attorney Rominger practices only in Pennsylvania and maintains his primary office in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Like taking candy from a baby.
Hey, Carl Rominger here. Weekend Appointment's the name of the show where we answer your legal questions. And let's see, we were talking with Gina in the last hour, so we'll start with her in a second here, Gina. So give me 1 second, I'll call your name out, and then you'll know you're on the Weekend Appointment with Carl Rominger. In the meantime, don't forget to go to weekendappointment.com so you can download your free will kit, or you can get a hold of me in case you do need a lawyer to talk about anything. You can send me an email, you can post your question on there, or you can get my office phone number and call the office to get that appointment. Gina.
Yes.
Okay. Let me recap real quick. So somebody took your house or some property you
own.
have.
It's a piece of land. It's a piece of land. They took the house off first. That's why I say there's so much to tell about this. I can't do it in a few minutes. You know what I mean? But the only thing I think I need to know right now, and I'd have to call back maybe if I want to know more, do more, since they've done this, and I don't believe it's been a month yet. I don't think it has. You think that I could go back, even though that's the last date? Maybe I could.
You might be able to, but I wouldn't leave it to chance. In other words, you're going to need to see somebody Monday or Tuesday. But I'd be Monday morning with bells on at a lawyer's office, banging on the door, saying, "What do I do? What do I do? What do I do?"
Okay, he's going to yell at me too because I haven't, gotten to him faster.
I understand, but what's going
yes.
From our standpoint as lawyers is there's magic deadlines, and like if let's say there's a 2-year statute of limitations for medical malpractice or a car accident. Mm-hmm. If you come to see me 2 years and 1 day later, I can't do anything. I'm powerless.
Uh-huh.
Lawyers, we don't like to be powerless. That's what makes us so upset.
I understand. Well, I thank you anyway for even, what you've told me.
It's okay, Gina. Just get in there and see that lawyer.
Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye. Got to remind Gina, got to remind everybody else out there, if you have a legal problem, you're sick, you're ill, you just don't want to deal with it, if you put your head in the sand under the pillow or don't tell your friends, family, and relatives about it, you might miss a deadline. And if you miss a deadline, sometimes I can work some magic, but some deadlines are fatal. Ken.
Yes.
You're on Weekend Appointment with Carl Rominger. What's going on?
Hey, Carl. What we talked about earlier was that I had a situation where there was a postnuptial agreement that was signed at my divorce to take care of my daughter financially. Mm-hmm. The monthly payments were going to be made, and I just wanted to make sure I get everything straight, that I would pay because I was making more money. So that went on, and that was 1999. And in 2002, and I continued to pay that. Well, in October 2002, I lost my job, and I was unable to pay for this child care, child support. And again, I keep saying that because everybody that has seen this postnuptial document, and even when I was taken into court for contempt for not paying it, they're unclear of, well, this isn't child care, this isn't child support. They just looked at the document themselves, and that's where I am with my question. It was written up where I would pay her this money for the child care,
right?
No matter what my financial income or situation would be. And as a matter of fact, I was just in Carlisle 2 weeks ago, and I saw an attorney, and she said, "I'm sorry, there's nothing that you can do because it clearly says here, here, and here that you would pay this," and she was deserving to this.
And I just don't know what the exact language was, and part of my issue is I don't know what language was used exactly to effectuate that, but to the extent that it's clear that it's for child support, agreements on child support are void against public policy, and so the court just said you can't make a binding agreement on child support.
Well, this contract is written up, and see, that's where the gray area is. The contract just basically says I'd give her $250 for the care of our daughter.
Right.
And there's no way out of it, no matter what your situation might be. I have had that said to me. You are liable for this. But what I want to do is go back to the attorney and say to him, what were you thinking? This is not possibly in my best interest.
Right.
How could this possibly be in my best interest? Why? And I think earlier you said, why did I wait so long? Only because this was brought back up 7 years later.
Yeah, and if you discover it at a certain point, then you're okay. And what I mean by that is you have the discovery rule. So if I put a sponge in your belly as a doctor, and 20 years later, all of a sudden for the first time there's a sharp, mysterious pain, and when you go see the emergency room, they're like, "Oh my gosh, there's a sponge in your belly."
Right.
Your 2 years starts right then. On the other hand, if your stomach hurts you really bad for the last 20 years and you just never saw anybody about it, your 2 years is probably up. It
didn't become an issue until I was taken into court for contempt of not paying. And like
Gotcha.
I said, the judge said, "Well, this guy's not in contempt. He lost his job, and you didn't come out." And the strangest thing that I find is, how could she go 7 years later and say, "Well, now I want this"? When, and as I explained before, in 2000, she was making more than I was making. Everybody, my family, my friends said to me, "Sue her." I said, "You know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that because it's just not right." How is she still entitled to all this money that I could have actually been getting from her? And she knows that. I went to her and I said, "Listen, I could have sued you. Why are you coming at me now?" She goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. That's your just tough luck. You didn't act upon it."
Right. Well, Ken, the short answer is you may have a legal malpractice action then, and we have to figure out exactly what your damages are, that sort of thing.
And one more thing with that attorney, I never had any legal representation before until my divorce came up. So I didn't know the law. I didn't deal with the law. So he was my very first attorney I ever had. You know what else he did? My simple divorce of like $900 went up to $4,800. He kept calling me and he was just like, "Oh, the attorney here didn't dot her I's or cross her T's," and it went up to $4,800. I paid $2,400 of that, and then I got another attorney, and they found in my favor, "You're not getting any money back, but you don't have to pay him anymore." And he got a slap on the wrist to say, "This is what my not the associates, but this is what my bosses were telling me to do." So
Gotcha.
I had trouble. I had issues with him before.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Before this came down, but I can't. But again, my question is, why? How did he make me sign a document or tell me that this is in my best interest when there was no place for modification?
Well, and there's always an interesting question on that, and here's the answer. Sometimes, if it was fully explained to you, and I'll give you an example. If I had a chance where, let's say she had a low income and you had a high income at the moment, I'm just making this up.
Correct.
And we enter into this amount, I would explain to you as saying, by making it unmodifiable, we're running the risk that if the situation flip-flops, you're going to be on the receiving end of this. On the other hand, if you continue to make more money and more money and she continues to make less and less, you're hedging that danger.
But again, don't you think that...
But wait, Ken, first, you could knowingly, intelligently enter into that kind of deal. In other words, you could say, "You know what, Carl, I don't care what happens, I'll live with this amount a month, knowing I'll never have to pay more. But I realize that someday I might kick myself in the butt because hindsight's 20/20. So you do that every day when you invest in a financial vehicle, for instance, okay? You buy a stock. You're betting it's going to go up, not go down. And you're going to hold on to it. You might later on regret buying that particular stock. My point is there are ways to knowingly, intelligently enter into that, and you could be advised. But if that's the case, I would expect that there should be a letter explaining that to you, and there probably isn't.
No, sir.
Yeah.
It's all legal. Like when she breaks it down, when I talked to the last attorney, she broke it down, and it was all legal jargon that, even as she said it to me, wasn't clear.
Right.
So,
Ken, I guess I tell you what I would have to do. If you want to come see me, I'd be happy to consult with you and look at the document and see if there's any claim that could be brought. I'd also be happy to look at the document and see if there's any way to weasel out of it at this point.
But do you think it's far-fetched to keep the attorney liable for, having me sign a document that's obviously not in my best interest?
Well, but it's now not in your best interest.
Only because I found that out a year ago.
I understand that. What I'm trying to say, though, is here's the other rub. What if you were making 4 times what you made then and she was making half?
Then it would be modifiable, though, wouldn't it?
No. You're right, because it's not it's not binding, right?
Yeah, and it kind of did happen because now we're through domestic relations.
Right.
And she's getting child support from me through domestic relations. And
so that amount's no longer at issue. That document's no longer being followed, right?
The old one. No, the old one isn't. But still, the $21,000 I'm liable for because it was a binding contract that I signed. Interesting.
Well, I need to know a little more factual background than we can get into here on the air, Ken. But
Monday morning, can I call you? Because I'm interested.
Yeah, just call Tammy or Linda in my office. They'll get you pigeonholed in the next week or so. Probably 2 weeks, because I know I got a rough week coming up here.
But it seems something possible.
It's something where, listen, I'll read it over and tell you, all right?
Okay, Carl.
All right, brother.
Thank you for your time.
All right, no problem.
Bye now.
Hey, this is Carl Rominger answering your legal questions, the show's weekend appointment. Don't forget to go to weekendappointment.com to declare or get your free will. Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here. The show's weekend appointment where I answer your legal questions. Oh, boy, don't forget to go to weekendappointment.com. And let's see here. Steve.
Yes.
How you doing?
Good, Carl. Thanks for taking the call.
No problem. What's going on?
Okay, calling on behalf of my wife, okay? She was out at a concert in Philadelphia on Wednesday night, okay? Got back in the area around 3 o'clock in the morning and was driving home from her friend's house in Manchester in York County. Don't know if you're familiar with the area or not, but almost as soon as she got out onto the road from her friend's development, she got a police officer behind her.
Okay.
And I'm thinking the guy was on a fishing expedition. He followed her for several miles up to the intersection of North George Street and Route 30.
Okay, I know where that is.
Okay. Kind of a big intersection. It's got a couple straight turning lanes, a couple left turning lanes, and maybe one or two right. Well, what happened was she made a left-hand turn on the 30 from one of the straight lanes, and he tagged her and pulled her over. Okay? So he got up and was talking to her at the car, and playing the game. Oh, it's 3 o'clock. Where have you been? What are you doing? She said, coming home for a concert. He said, where was the concert? Who was it? This and that. And over the course of the conversation, she somehow let out that earlier that day she took the driver's license points test because she was up at 7 points. Okay. So then he started, getting on her about the test a little bit. He said, what did you think about the test? She said, well, I thought there were some loaded questions here and there. And he said, okay, give me some examples. So I don't know how far the conversation went, but, ultimately he did tag her with the citation for, 3111 or obedience to traffic control devices.
Okay.
Now, this is probably her first or second time driving through that area at night, and she's not familiar with the area, and it was an honest mistake. It wasn't like she was speeding this time or past when she shouldn't have this time.
Right.
But she is kind of interested in at least going before the magistrate and pleading her case.
So he charged her with 3111?
Yeah.
Okay, here's the dilemma. I mean, technically, if you go in front of the magistrate, he can find you guilty or not guilty, or the officer could, at the beginning of the hearing, amend the charge.
Oh, okay.
And because of the fact that he could technically do that and go with perhaps try to prove some kind of points violation.
Okay.
And because traffic violations don't require a mens rea, meaning a mindset of any particular type, being mistaken is not generally a defense.
Okay.
So as a result, her defense is probably one of, I didn't know the area real well, and give me a chance here.
Yeah, is exactly what she was going to say. I mean, the bottom line is she did turn left out of a straight lane. She did, break the law.
Right. So my advice is, since a 3111 will have no effect whatsoever on her PennDOT record.
Yeah, don't need that again.
We just don't do anything with it. We pay the fine and call it a day.
Okay, that's what I was kind of thinking. But
if she had no points on her license and she wanted to roll the dice a little bit, but as a general rule, I always tell people to take the 3111 because the officer's first is not going to be happy when you get there and he goes, I gave you a 3111 because I was trying not to give you points, and now you've drugged me out here at great expense to the township. So
Understood. I mean, he made the point to tell her that when he did give her a citation, I am doing you a favor. Yeah, I understand that. So maybe we just bite the bullet and cough up the $109 and be done with it.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Okay. All right. Well,
all right,
that's
Steve.
Then. Thanks for taking my call.
Hey, no problem. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Hi, this weekend appointment with Carl Rominger. Deborah, what's going on? Hey, Deborah.
Hi. I moved last fall. I bought another house. My previous house was not selling, so I rented it out.
Okay.
Now I got a letter from a lawyer. My neighbor, apparently my previous neighbor, is threatening to take me to court because my tenant is being too noisy.
Okay.
What is my responsibility other than notifying him about the noise?
Yeah, theoretically, a landlord can be required to abate a nuisance. And so if the tenant, what you should do is I mean, here's what you have to do. Okay. You kind of have to work with the neighbor in one respect, which is what I would usually do is get a hold of the neighbor's lawyer. I mean, obviously, if you came to see me, I would get a hold of the neighbor's lawyer and say, listen, we'll take proactive steps to deal with this. We're going to copy your letter out to the neighbor. We're going to send our own letter to the neighbor. If it persists, let us know, and we'll begin the eviction procedures.
Okay.
You can't rent the place out to the Hell's Angels, and then when all the motorcycle revving is going on all night long or whatever, then go, well, I'm sorry, I just rented it to these people, and I can't help the fact that they're doing all this noise and whatnot. You're the landlord, and you do have the ability to evict them for violating that kind of quiet enjoyment type right.
Okay. I mean, really, I think he was playing a radio.
Right.
And according to my son, it wasn't really that loud, and there is no noise ordinance in our town. Right.
No, and it's what we call nuisance. And so, if I was representing the other side, I might sue you and claim that there was a nuisance going on.
That's pretty much what the letter says.
And so that's a civil lawsuit to abate a nuisance. Now, am I picking up that your son is the...
No, but he did... Another neighbor had called me and said that the radio was on. I'm assuming that the neighbor who's filing the complaint didn't call me because she assumed I probably wouldn't answer the phone, which was probably correct. This is not the first time that she's sued me. Well,
and that's the other problem you run into is you have a litigious person. There may be nothing you can do to make them...
Right. It's a vendetta for who knows what reason, but I still have to respond to it.
Correct. Well, Deborah, I wish you luck. I mean, hopefully you get the house sold, and then you don't have to deal with this person anymore.
Okay, that would be great.
And the other reason to avoid any nuisance litigation, if you can, is simply because you're in the process of selling it. And if the house is subject to nuisance litigation, I mean, that's going to become a sticking point at closing as well.
See, and I had taken it off the market. I figured market recovered.
Right.
But now it's getting aggravating.
Right. I understand. The other option, like I say, is to evict that tenant and find one that's better if you think that's going to solve the problem. But what I'm also now kind of hearing in the undercurrent here is your neighbor's not going to be happy about anything.
No. It wouldn't make any difference.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
So my obligation is to notify the tenant, send him a letter, talk to the lawyer, tell him that he's been notified,
and that you'll take appropriate steps if there's more problems. But of course, and here's what I would do. If I can have a little fun with them, write him back and be like, "Listen, I'm happy to evict them if they don't follow through with the warning, but I'll need documentation of what's going on. So make sure your client can provide me with documentation in some form or another, so that I know." Oh, yeah, by the way, your client's previously sued me, so I'm not certain I want to take somebody to court unless she wants to do an affidavit first and, swear it out, because I don't want to, given the mistrust between us, I don't want to go to court on her word alone, thinking maybe that she might just be harassing me or haranguing me. I want this, rock solid. And that way, if she swears out something false, you can kind of stick it to her later.
I
know it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Pain in the butt.
I just want it to go away. That's my point of view.
That's the smart way to go. All right, Deborah.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.
Right. Okay. Bye.
Carl Rominger here, the show's Weekend Appointment, the show where I answer your legal questions. Make sure you go to weekendappointment.com, our companion website. We've got tons of questions and answers on there. Lots of people have posted questions, and they've gotten answers. You can post a question if it's not already on there and get an answer. Or if you just want to shout out about something, we've got boards on there where you can discuss things, talk about things, give us your opinion. You get my email, my phone number, and get a hold of me. Weekend Appointment, I'll see you in a bit.
I don't understand you people. I mean, all these picky little points you keep bringing up, they don't mean nothing. You saw this kid just like I did. You're not going to tell me you believe that phony story about losing the knife and that business about being at the movies? Look, you know how these people lie? It's born in them. I mean, what the heck? I don't have to tell you. They don't know what the truth is. And let me tell you, they don't need any real big reason to kill someone either. No, sir.
Oh, boy. Anybody recognize that? That's from 12 Angry Men. That is the guy you do not want on your jury. You do not want him on your jury. If you are on a jury and you think like that, you should not be on the jury. Horrible, horrible, horrible. My goodness. Actually, though, I meet people like that all the time until it's their kid or their cousin or their wife who's the one being accused of something. And all of a sudden they're like, well, I don't understand. She didn't do anything, and I don't get this. And how can people say that? And how can they make these assumptions and these stereotypes and not give a fair shake? And why wasn't there an investigation? Weekend Appointment's name of the show, folks. I'm Carl Rominger. I'm here answering your legal questions. If you need any day-to-day advice, you need an attorney in your life, you want your real estate looked over, you want to sell something, you want to buy something, you own a business, you got a personal injury, a family law matter, you go to weekendappointment.com and you can look me up there. Patty, you're on Weekend Appointment with Carl Rominger. What's going on?
Okay. I don't know how to quite explain it. We have family property that was left to my mother's mother's mother in another state.
Okay.
And it has kind of come down through the line, and it's kind of up to my mother and some of her nieces and nephews, or my cousins. But nothing, should we have changed the deeds? Or no one ever bothered changing the deeds. People have been dead for 40, 50, 60 years, and nobody changed the deeds.
Yeah, theoretically, the deeds should have been getting, and I'll give you an example. If a husband and wife own it together, and I'll be real clear about this, if one of them dies, you don't have to do anything to the deed, okay? Uh-huh. That survivor can transfer the deed without a problem.
Okay.
If they're both passed away, then you got a problem because the estate of the second one to die has to transfer the deed.
Whoa.
Into the heirs. And if that wasn't done, then we're wondering about something. Who were the heirs? Well, if there was a will, and we can find a will, that tells us who the heirs were.
No.
If they died without a will, then it has to be transferred to the children pursuant to the rules of intestacy. And then if it was transferred, so if there was 3 kids, each one would own a third. And then if one of them died, their third would go by their will or by the laws of intestacy to their issue. So we might have a situation where the interests are very fractured. It would be advisable to clean this up.
Yeah, we would like to.
Well, that's something we can do. It's not that hard to do.
Really?
We just have to trace down where everybody's interest should be.
Okay, it was 4 kids. Came down 4 kids, then to grandmother, and my mother, and then I'm next in line.
Yeah.
We're talking back, I guess my grandmother got it back in the early 90s.
Okay. This is the kind of thing that is not that difficult because the courthouse will have records of the deed, okay? Mm-hmm. Then we can use death records and the Register of Wills office to reconstruct some of those issues.
Nobody had wills.
Okay, which is easy then. So then we just have to follow the flow, and then we would file what's called a quiet title action. And that's where we ask the court to take all the clouds off this title and quiet it and get everything vested in who it needs to be vested in.
Well, see, nobody's ever bothered with the land. It's on a hill in West Virginia.
Okay.
And we're talking about 30 acres. And
does everybody live up in Pennsylvania? They all live down there?
All over the country.
Okay. So we have to get you a West Virginia lawyer probably to file the quiet title action.
Well, the problem is they want to put a pipeline across the land.
Uh-huh.
And everybody that's involved, and the pipeline company doesn't even know who all is involved. They've bought some of the land off of the one-fourth of the land goes to a cousin.
Mm-hmm.
The other three-fourths of the land comes to my mother and her sister's children and her brother's children.
Are the pipeline guys paying any money?
They're going to want to pay money. Now, we have to go to Waynesburg for a conference and then down in Morgantown for a conference, not next week, the week after that.
Right.
It's the Marcellus Shale.
Right.
I'm sure you've heard of that.
Yeah, a little bit.
So we don't know what we're dealing with here, but we want to put it in one name to kind of protect it. And
if you did this right, okay, you got everybody figured out, and you had everybody sign off on the documents, you could not only get paid by the pipeline company, but you could probably get them to do all the legal work on this.
Oh.
Are you a Pennsylvania resident?
Yes, I am.
Well, if you want to come see me, I'd be happy to talk to you a little bit more off the air about some particulars and some things we might be able to do. We can contact the pipeline company and maybe work out a deal for them to take care of all the heavy lifting.
All the loose ends, right?
And then you kind of cut your deal with them, and then you get everybody to sign off on it, and then you get them to take care of the loose ends at their expense as part of the deal.
Mm-hmm. Well, see, my uncle was going to turn it over to my granddaughter.
Uh-huh.
And he died suddenly a few years ago.
Right.
Which messed everything up because he took care of part of it. My mother's been paying the taxes since 1980.
Oh yeah.
No one else has paid the taxes.
Well, and she may be entitled to a contribution for that.
Some of them don't even know that they're entitled to anything of this land.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, in order to actually pass the title or quiet it up or do what you need to do,
we got to tell them.
You got to tell them.
But we don't want to cut them out of any money that's coming to them.
Right, and you wouldn't.
But what we want to do is get it in one name to protect it.
Well, and it's not even a question of getting it in one name is that important as if you're going to make any money with this land, it's got to get cleaned up. Somebody's got to own it, and it could end up in everybody's name, and that protects it just as well. It just have to be some other agreements cut.
Well, no, we had some cousins that sold out, and I don't know, how do you sell a piece of land that you own a portion of it?
You just sell that portion, but we have some...
We don't even know how much portion it is.
Right. We have some ability to prevent that as well. There's some other things you can do.
Well, I think 3 or 4 of my second cousins have sold out their share, thought they got a lot of money for it. I think 1,000 one guy got and 2,000 another guy got. You know, I don't know what the other 2 got. But we just want to... My great-grandmother made me promise that I would never get it out of the family.
Right.
I'm still trying to live up to that promise.
Wow, I understand.
And because it was in the family for years, since probably early 1800s, maybe even earlier.
Right. Well,
so there are ways, and I've got you're the weekend.
Yeah, weekendappointment.com.
Okay, weekend appointment. Now I have to go through my mother to do this, but I think we will, because we do have to do something about it. But you said that you feel that there's things that we could do to stop a lot of the problems.
Exactly.
Okay. Does it sound like something that's interesting?
It does sound a little interesting, absolutely. We'll have to figure out, though, how much of it can be done in Pennsylvania and how much of it's going to require us to find somebody down in West Virginia. But if we do it right, maybe we can get all your work taken care of by somebody else.
Oh.
And paid for.
Well, the company that's wanting to do this, the drilling is out of Waynesburg, PA.
Got it. Well, perfect. Perfect.
which kind of eliminates a little bit of problem.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, come see me.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, no problem.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, Shane, how much time do I got left in this segment, buddy? Not much time? I'm done? Weekend appointment with attorney Carl Rominger. I'll be back after the break.
I call my lawyer.
Carl Rominger here, answering your legal questions. Weekend Appointment's the name of the show. Make sure you go to weekendappointment.com on the internet. There you can find access to me. You can get your questions answered. You can get your free will. And, of course, you can find our database of questions that have been previously answered. What's up in the legal world these days? Well, all kinds of things are changing. There's a move in the legislature right now to make custody, in the Pennsylvania legislature, to make it a presumption of 50-50 custody. For some reason, the family law bar is opposed to this, at least in general from what I've seen, as are, the people that are anti-violence, domestic violence people, because they assume somehow that this is pro-domestic violence. Makes no sense whatsoever. I think all custody cases should start with the presumption that the mother and the father should share the child equally and evenly. There is no logical reason to pick, in this day and age, one parent over the other. First of all, men and women are both perfectly capable of taking care of children. Number two, women have increasingly entered the workforce to the point where there is little argument that a woman is more likely to be at home or remarry and be a stay-at-home mom. There are many stay-at-home dads as well. And in many intact relationships, the child care is shared heavily by both parties. In fact, the psychologists and psychiatrists who are involved in these cases quite often tell us that a split shared custody arrangement, where people are particularly in the same school district or very close to one another, is a very good result. So there is no reason for this hysteria to say, oh, we can't do that, we can't do that. We have to go with the best interest of the child. All a presumption says, ladies and gentlemen, is that the court shall start from one proposition and then require to be proven otherwise. So all things being equal, a judge can't go, I like women better, or I hate men, or I hate women and I like men, and therefore I'm going to do things a certain way. The judge would have to say, the law requires me to start with the proposition that you each get half. Now, if one of you can prove to me that it's in the child's best interest not to do that, I will go with the new scenario. And people don't understand that in the law, presumptions are terribly important because they affect where a judge starts in the burden of proof. So right now, if you separate, you go your own way, and you leave the children in the marital home, whether you're the man or the wife, because you're saying, well, I got to, move out, I got to get established, I'm going to wait about 2 months, and things aren't going so well. I thought we were going to share custody, but it doesn't seem to be working. But I'm only, 6 miles down the road. I would like to share custody. And the judge says, well, I'm going to start with the best interest standard. And the kids have been in the marital home for a while. And I'm going to kind of think maybe I'll start with the proposition they should stay in their own bedrooms where they've always been. Well, guess what? I don't have a problem with, nor should you, with the proposition that I'm going to start with the idea that both parents should be equally involved with the child and then split that child. Is there anything wrong with that? No, absolutely nothing wrong with that. Most importantly, it makes sense because the child gets the benefit of both parents. Now, if I turn out to be a child abuser, a deadbeat dad, somebody who's not safe or capable of taking care of children, that presumption fades and mama gets to keep primary custody of the child. So there is, again, no logical reason to be against that. But lots of people are, and for some reason, lots of them are family lawyers. And maybe the cynical part of me says, maybe some lawyers figure by making it more contentious, by cutting one party out more often than not, I can increase the level of litigation and therefore the amount of billable hours I can generate. Is that a possible motive? Could be. Never heard anybody articulate it, and I would like to think, because I know many of my colleagues who practice, I practice some family law, do quite a bit of it, but not exclusively. I have some colleagues who practice family law exclusively, and for the most part, I would not believe that of any of them as an individual. But as a group position, I always say this about police officers. Most police officers own guns and like guns. But as a group, law enforcement's usually anti-gun. So even though all the members are generally pro-gun, the organizations usually take an anti-gun stance. It seems the same way with the family lawyers. They're mainly pro-anti-litigation and pro-getting along and pro-happy families, but their organizations might worry more about the business aspects. Now, how the domestic violence people get involved in this, that's just scary, because what they're trying to say is that apparently, more often than not, people must be separating because of abuse. And I think they may see abuse some places where it's not, because that's what they do. I'm related to a surgeon who once said that an ear, nose, and throat doctor, who said surgeons want to cut and internists, want to poke and prod and run tests, and orthopedic surgeons particularly want to cut. In fact, an orthopedic surgeon I know recently called himself a glorified carpenter. But meaning what his point was is that each doctor's bias kind of seems how they solve a problem. So surgeons want to cut, internists want to run tests, try some medicine, try this, try that. Same thing with the domestic violence people. I feel that maybe they are seeing more domestic violence as the cause of separation than is always the case. Maybe that's why they're opposed to this perfectly rational movement to change Pennsylvania to a state where the presumption of custody is equal in each parent. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I can tell you that if you get a chance, write your state senator, write your state representative, and tell them that we need to have the 50-50 presumption of custody in our law. I'm not even going to get started on child support today, because that's a whole nother issue. But that's a boondoggle as well. So hopefully you never have to handle those issues. And if we went to 50-50 custody, we could really cut down on the contentiousness of support, because the size of the awards would have to fall, and in many instances there would be no reason to make an award. Think about that. We could actually cut down on the child support system by giving more custody to both parties. And at the same time, have a child spend more quality time with each parent. Now, I'm not advocating kids living out of suitcases and driving 40 miles back and forth. And parents have a duty to be part of this as well. And this is where, of course, people always fall down. You can't move to Illinois to meet that new girl that you just found on the internet and live with her if you want to keep this intact family somewhat intact in a separation. You should stay within 20 miles or less of each other unless there's a really good reason to move, and that becomes tough. I understand work and reality is what it is. I've had people say, well, what kind of parent would move far away and leave their kid behind? Well, a lot of good parents do that for no other reason than they need work, or they're serving their country, for instance. Are you really saying that somebody who's serving in the United States military is a bad parent because they went off to Afghanistan for a couple years to fight for freedom and for their kids? No, you're not. Well, it's the same when somebody has to move for other work-related reasons. There may be not as much of a noble purpose involved, but we certainly can see how economic reality being what it is. If you're a registered nurse and you live in a city where there's no jobs available for RNs, but you find a job 2 states away where you're going to be able to make 150% of your current salary, which might just be unemployment at the moment, or more, you have to rationally look at that. What I'm saying, however, is the presumption should be that if the parents are anywhere near each other, that we try to split the kids as often as possible, and we work backwards from that position. If anybody's got any ideas about this, I'd love to see them on weekendappointment.com. Just go to weekendappointment.com, post up there under Pennsylvania Politics and Law, shout out about how you feel about it, put it under the custody category. I don't care. I'll move it to wherever it needs to be if it's in the wrong spot, and we'll talk about it. But I think that's my 2 cents worth about custody for today and where we should be. Also, I want to make sure I remind you to go to weekendappointment.com so you can claim your free will. Under our free will program, you'll be able to get your own will with me, a real live lawyer. You send in the kit. My secretary calls you. You come into the office. We sit down and we go over it piece by piece, issue by issue, and I explain it all to you. So it's not like one of these forms you buy at the Office Max or you get online at LegalZoom or any place like that where you pay a lot of money but you don't get any advice. Here, it's free and you get advice. So make sure you go to weekendappointment.com and check out that free will offer. And make sure you go to weekendappointment.com if you need a lawyer throughout the week. I am more than happy to meet with you. I'm more than happy to try to help you with your legal problems. And, once in a while people say, Carl, you must be so busy, and I know you do the radio show. You probably don't have time for my little case. Well, let me tell you something. In a general practice like I have, our practice is made up of hundreds and hundreds of little cases. Occasionally we get big cases. Occasionally we have high-profile cases. Occasionally our cases make the newspaper. But our day-to-day bread and butter and what we love to do is all those little things. You need me to look over a document. You need me to write you a will. You need an agreement for an employee. You want to expand your liquor license premise a little bit, and you need to file an application with the LCB. Those are the kinds of things we do each and every day in the law office. You got to want to fight over some land. Your neighbor's putting stakes where they're not supposed to be, blocking off your driveway. Need us to write a letter. Need us to review a letter. An attorney writes you a letter, and you think you just have to do what it says because your neighbor's attorney says you must do this. Have me look at it. Maybe you don't. Quite often than not, you don't, because we attorneys know that if we bluff, sometimes people will just do what we say they need to do. So, anyhow, go to weekendappointment.com. You can meet Carl Rominger there. And, of course, don't forget to listen to weekendappointment.com here on the radio. And you can see all the stations in the schedule at weekendappointment.com as well as past broadcasts of the show, which will be replayed as downloads or podcasts or whatever you call them these days. Carl Rominger here. The show's been Weekend Appointment. I'll see you next time.